Tushar, this is regarding the change that has come into the ITC provision, section 16. We know the industry from the October 2019, there was a provision in law which was introduced under Rule 36(4) about the provisional ITC. There has been some disputes around this provision, and something has happened, which I would want to hear from you directly, that what was the intention of bringing this amendment? How do you see that? What will be the legal implications? And what are the challenges as a consultant you see that you have faced till now, or you may be facing in future? Over to you.
Sure, Gitika. So we will be discussing broadly three parts. First, what is this amendment all about? What is the amendment which has been brought under the ITC provisions? Second, what was the background of this amendment? Why there was a need to bring this amendment? Third, how will this amendment impact the industry? When I say how will it impact the industry, it will be for both the periods, like prior to this amendment, what will be the impact of this proposed amendment, and how it will impact in future. So we all know that under GST, section 16(2) deals with the conditions basis which input tax credit will be available to the taxpayer, and it contains various conditions like I should have a valid invoice, I should have received the goods or services, so on and so forth. Now, what government has proposed is that they have added another condition which states that the supplier should upload the GST invoice which they have issued to the receiver or the purchaser. They should upload it in their GSTR1, which should be auto-populated in GSTR2 of the recipient. Now, this amendment speaks about uploading of invoices by the supplier in their outward returns, that is GSTR1. Why this amendment was required? For this, let us go to history. At the time of GST implementation, when GST was being implemented and the law was being drafted, when the first cut of GST law, first draft GST law was introduced in 2016. In fact, I was also a part of the GST and GST law committee. Therein, it was always discussed, like the intention of government from day one was always clear, that I will allow ITC to the recipient only if supplier pays the tax to the government. The intention of government was clear from the very first day that I want to make GST law in such a manner that credit will be allowed to the recipient only if supplier pays tax to the government. What they did for this, there were two options available with the government. First was to take data from supplier, their sales data, to take data from the purchaser, their purchase data, and do the mismatch themselves, do the matching exercise themselves. Second option was to shift this matching exercise on the taxpayer. So they opted for the second option in the GST law, wherein they proposed that supplier will issue the invoice, they will upload on the portal, which will be reflected and auto-populated to the recipient. Then recipient has to reconcile with their purchase register and accordingly accept or reject the invoice. So there was an interactive portal which was contemplated at the time of GST implementation, where supplier was supposed to upload, receiver was supposed to accept, so that both the parties agree on the portal itself. Eventually, at the time of GST implementation in July 2017, this entire concept of matching, principle of data being auto-populated from supplier to recipient did not go because of technical glitches, and everything was kept in abeyance. So what they did, they came out with a one-pager return called GSTR 3B. They came out with a one-pager return called GSTR 3B, wherein they allowed the taxpayer to take the entire credit in a consolidated manner without giving the purchase detail. So during that phase in 2017, later part of 2017, I used to file only 3B, take credit based on invoices which I have received and which I have accounted in my books of account. I was not aware whether the supplier has paid the tax or not. No detail was provided to me by the government at that point of time. In October 2018, for the first time, they started providing detail about the suppliers' data, whether they have paid the tax or not. GSTR 2A, what we call in a layman language GSTR 2A, which we get the details of the supplier, whether they have paid the tax or not, whether they have uploaded the data or not. They started providing me those details from October 2018 only. And during that time, when they came and they analyzed the data, like from October 2018 till October 2019, when they analyzed the data, they saw that in 3B, the taxpayer is availing so much of credit, whereas what is coming in 2A is much lesser. So there is a big gap. So eventually, they wanted to restrict the the credit to the extent what is coming in your 2A. That was their broader objective, for which what they did, they introduced Rule 36(4). They did not amend the law. Please mind it. They did not amend the law. They just introduced a rule, Rule 36(4), wherein they said that the maximum credit which an industry can get is what is auto-populated in 2A plus a provisional credit of 20%, which later they reduced it to 10% and 5%. So as of now, what government wants to say is that I have introduced Rule 36(4), by virtue of which I am restricting your credit to what is auto-populated in 2A plus 5%. But when we speak legally about such insertion of rules and the way government try to implement their intention, because what is the intention has to come out from the legislature. It cannot be in the mind or in your documentations or policy documentation. It should come in the law. What they imposed under rule was never there in the act. What they imposed under Rule 36(4), that you should upload the invoice in GSTR1, was never there in the act. So to curb, on this ground itself, various writs have been filed across India, which is pending before various high courts. So to curb this lacuna in the rule, now they have proposed to insert a section 16(2)(a), another condition in the act itself, that supplier should upload the invoices on the GST portal, then only recipient will be able to get the credit. So by virtue of this amendment, their intention seems to be that the time by which this amendment will be notified, maybe late December 2021 or January 2022, by that time when this amendment gets notified, they will even amend Rule 36(4), where they are allowing 5% provisional credit. They will not allow any more 5% provisional credit, and credit will be available to the industry only if the invoice is coming in 2A. So you take credit in your particular return only if it is coming in your 2A. So that is the model which the government is trying to implement virtually. However, this amendment is yet to be notified. And once notified, in my humble opinion, from that time, this restriction will be applicable. However, when we talk about the past period, say 17, 18, 18, 19, at this time, supplier was not, the purchaser was never aware about the supplier data also. The law, the act is not properly drafted, and there is a lacuna in the way the provisions are worded. I'm not going too technical for today's discussion. To put it in a simple words, for the past period, in my view, there is a good case to say legally for the industries that if they have taken the credit after complying with all other conditions, that is, they have proper invoice, they have paid to the vendor, so and so forth, all conditions have been complied. Eventually, it's the supplier who has not paid the tax to the government, who has not uploaded on GSTR1. It cannot be my it cannot be my fault. I should be eligible for the credit. However, after this amendment gets notified, and considering now the IT system is much robust, now I get the details in a second. In fact, if a supplier upload the invoice now, it will come to me hardly in milliseconds. So after this amendment gets notified, it will be difficult for me to take a stand that I should be able to get the credit without supplier uploading the invoice. For past period, good case. For future, it will be difficult. So we have to plan, in any case, this entire matching principle exercise in our organization and ensure that supplier pays the tax on timely basis. Either you pay him the GST amount later on, amend your contracts, whatever strategy may be adopted, company to company, organization to organization. But this seems to be a very, very important amendment, which has to be implemented at ground level, because when we are doing departmental audits or DGI investigations, etc., this is one of the basic point raised by all departmental officials. They come, they say there is a 2A 3B mismatch, reverse the credit, then you keep on fighting, so and so forth. So very important amendments have to be practically implemented at ground level.
Correct, Tushar. This is something which the industry was already doing it from the October 2019, while there was a dispute being raised with respect to the legal sanctity of the rules which have been brought in. But in practical, we have seen that people were following this rule. What you have mentioned is a very crucial point, which all the taxpayers should take note of, is that today you have been given that leverage of taking the provisional credit, which started from 20%, 10%, and now it's only 5%. Going forward, it will be only 100% match credit. So it is something that government has been, making the taxpayers, in a sense, making them prepared for this kind of an exercise to be done. And now it becomes an additional compliance or an additional requirement at an industry level to ensure that whatever that provisional credit which they were taking today, going forward, that will also not be available. So, Dinesh sir, I'll come to you on this aspect. How, at a ground level, what are the practical challenges you have, faced when you have to deal with the vendors? Because ensuring the compliances, only thing that can be done is, reaching out to them through various communications, etc. At your level in your industry, how difficult it has been to ensure the vendor compliances and to ensure that you don't miss out to the credits and the amount that you've already paid to him, and you take the benefit in the law. How do you you have dealt with this?
Yeah, Gitika. So, I'll start answering your question by remembering Mr. Arun Jaitley only. And why, I have a reason behind that. So, if you remember, in budget speech 2017, right, and this was his last budget speech, before he started deliberating on the tax provision, he said, we are largely a non-compliant economy, right? And we need to increase the governance and we need to increase the number of people who are compliant, blah, blah, blah. And that is why, he imposed a surcharge on people who are, earning beyond a certain point. Now, my discomfort is, and, GST got implemented in 2017 only, on 1st July 2017. So, and this budget speech was there in January 2017. And today, in 2020-21, after 3.5 years of GST, I'm still failed to understand what government has done to make the economy largely a compliant economy. Because the entire onus has been transferred to the SSC from the administration.
Correct.
It means from 3%, the number must be 97 and 3. So now we should be 97% compliant people are there in the economy and 3% only who are the tax evaders. That's why the government has trusted, like Amitabh said, the authorities are trusting so much on the SSAs that they are putting entire onus of administration on the SSC. Right. So I'm missing Mr. Arun Jaitley. And, if he would have been alive, then I think we would have something else as a provision. Now coming to the real challenge which we are facing, it is very, very difficult to reconcile this amount. Right? There could be n number of issues, especially, people who are having turnover below 5 crores. Even with the big companies, there are issues. They have their different, business models. Sometimes they are uploading the SAP number, not the invoice number. Sometimes they are issuing the credit note without telling me the GST credit note, right? Sometimes there is a difference in dates, and company like Unilever, P&G, it is very difficult first to reach out to the right person that who is going to answer your query.
Absolutely.
It is very, very difficult, right? Third is bank. You will never be able to reconcile the bank credit in your books. Third, the hotel. In our, the Varun Beverages, we are registered in 25, 30 states. Our people travel all along. Some cities are, B class or C class city. They do not have even the 3-star hotels. We are paying GST. We are ensuring that our GST details are rightly captured. You won't believe, yesterday we had a discussion and we had to reverse more than ₹1 crore credit just because people are not compliant. We have not budgeted that cost. And Amitabh would agree to me. As a CFO, he would never keep that in budget, that there would be a GST reversal also. And that too is where, we have not gone and checked the 3B filed or not. Because we all are concentrating only on 2A. And now 2B. Right? What about 3B? If he has not filed 3B. So, there should be end to compliances.
Right, right, right.
First, I have to do a compliance. Second, I have to ensure my
My
suppliers are.
supplies compliance. Hmm.
It is very, very difficult for me. Right. So, I was deliberating on this GST rollout in the year 2016, November 2016 in a CII forum. And at that point in time, I said, the way GST is getting rolled out or drafted, one day every big company will have a reconciliation GM. Right. So you will end up having a reconciliation department separately. Believe me. Last year, the government has the TCS provision. Right.
Correct.
Again, that was plan A. Did not met their expectation. Now they are putting on TDS on purchase of goods. Now you tell me, you need somebody who is going to reconcile the amount of TDS and TCS with your 26 years.
Yeah, you need to have a special team who has to work, round the clock on this.
And GST reconciliation is already there.
It's already there. Correct.
Right. And second, it is not that TCS and TDS. They are saying TDS will supersede TCS. Right. If not TDS, then TCS. So first I need to ensure and reach out to my all customer and vendor to ensure whether they are falling under TCS or TDS. Right. Then I need to go and change my SAP functionality, that whether it will be TCS or TDS. And I'm still failed to understand, and I'm still struggling to find an answer. For example, and I'm a little digressing, from the indirect tax subject, but it is on reconciliation. If, as per law, my customer is under obligation, right, to withhold TDS, but he has not done the compliance, do I enter obligation to do a TCS? Because they said if not TDS, then TCS will come. So it means, again, in income tax, if he fails to do the compliances, which he is under obligation to do, still I am under obligation to do that. Sir, how many reconciliation do you want me to do?
And sir, just to add over here, in fact, sometimes what happens is the entire compliance burden automatically starts shifting to the big business houses, because every small taxpayer would want to take a plea, I don't have the resources, I don't have the mechanism, I missed it out. Like you mentioned that you are concentrating on the 2A, which is populated from GSTR1. Who is ensuring 3B? Major disconnect. You want to ensure that the tax has been paid. At the end of the day, as a customer, I keep on, asking my customer, my supplier, whether you have paid the tax or not, give me an undertaking whether you have. But trust me, all this becomes a piece of paper. How do you enforce it? On the other end, we have also seen such cases where it's, the suppliers market. You really can't force your suppliers to do certain things. Like in a normal situations, we, as a commercial transaction or a business advice, we say that, get an undertaking sign, an indemnity sign, or maybe you can hold on to the payment, etc. But when it's a supplier dominant market, a customer, he simply says that, no, I can't do that, because he will stop supplying to me. So in all circumstances, one case or the other case, the recipient is always at the jeopardy. Either he has to ensure compliances for both the parties, or he has to sit back and lose onto the credit because he cannot force the other party to do the compliances. So this is something which we have seen and experienced that certain advices, because of these compliances, sometimes they just become a piece of advice which cannot be implemented. So that's where,
and also, Kritika, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes,
the government has done a very fantastic thing last year. They said that if your cash payment is below 5% of your P&L, then the audit threshold is changed, right? So it means you are giving a kind of incentive to people who are actually not promoting the cash economy, right? That is a very, very welcome step. To my understanding, government should also implement the similar thing in GST, that if you are making payment through a banking channel, right, and you are in possession of your original invoice, you have received the goods and services, and there is no need of reconciliation. Vis-a-vis, if you are having a cash payment mechanism, then there will be a scrutiny, right? And you need to comply with blah, blah, blah requirement. When I have made the payment, I am under possession of the original invoice, Or you see, government is again, I'm going back to that point. You have plan A, B, and C. If you again look at the strict reading of the law, it says to avail the credit, you should have the original invoice. You should have received the goods. You should have made the payment. And now the supplier must have uploaded the invoice. Right? It means you are imposing one and more condition every year, but not relaxing the other one. Either
Correct.
they should come up and said that you need not to be in possession of original invoice if the supplier has uploaded. Right? In this era, and again going back to the practical aspect, you need to have the original invoice, which need to be signed either physically or digitally. So many people are not able to appreciate what is digital signature on this on the invoice. We receive an invoice stating that it is a computer generated invoice, does not require any signature. Whereas GST law says it has to be issued as per IT Act 2000. Right? So whether it is compliant with the IT Act 2000 or not, I am not aware.
Absolutely. So these are the practical.
The requirement of the original invoice. If you are asking that if it is reflecting on two-way, then no need of the original invoice. But the intention is not to provide, not to give the credit. Intention is to impose so many things कि भैया 6 बता दो इसको एक में तो फेल करेगा ही. So it is like you are catch hold of by a traffic police. उसने बोला लाइसेंस दिखाओ, then आप इंश्योरेंस दिखा दो, फिर आप पोल्यूशन दिखा दो और कुछ नहीं है तो आपने बेल्ट नहीं लगाई थी और आजकल तो फिर मास्क नहीं लगाया था. तो अगर रोका है तो कुछ ना कुछ लेके जाऊंगा. So this is not for industry.
Right. So this is another instance of adding on compliances on the taxpayer without realizing the practical, implementation, whether it is possible or not.
They are imposing new measures. I am fine with that.
Yeah.
But they should remove the old one.
They should remove the old one. When moving on to one compliance, the other should be relaxed. Coming to Mr. Mohanty, sir, we have seen the law is, there is a requirement of matching, etc. Now we have to live with it. Let's agree to it. And unless until someone challenges this provision, how do you see that there is a role of technology in this entire exercise? Do you think that it helps the taxpayers in identifying those matching, etc.? Or you think that this is something which at the end of the day, we as a human being have to, dig into the invoices and do the manual activity at the end? So how do you look at it, that whether technology helps you in doing this activity, or it is something which just adds on to another layer of the, exercise that you have to do?
Geetika, my heart goes out to Mr. Mittal's discourse a while ago, this, the whole system, this does not incentivize dealing with the small people actually, in the sense that if my vendor is a small time player who doesn't know much about the compliances and 2As and 3Bs, I should not be dealing with those people if this is the take. So technology is as good as a person sitting behind it and complying with it. So technology or a portal by itself will not help until the people are uploading invoices, or maybe they're paying their taxes. So the whole intent, as Tushar was discussing a while ago, that in order that I should, being a customer, get a full credit of my ITC, the government's intention is that my vendor should pay tax first. So this cannot be ensured. This cannot be ensured, especially when you are dealing with small and medium sector enterprises.
Correct. So somewhere down the line, you are saying that if government is imposing such restrictions on me, and I'm dealing with the vendors who either a small person who cannot comply, who is not, techno savvy, etc., then somewhere the government is discouraging me to deal with these guys and go on
absolutely.
to the person who's,
yes.
well off, who understands the compliances and who's doing the routine transactions.
There was a little talk of some rating system as well in GST.
Yes. Compliance
vendors
ratings
would be given some certificates, or maybe that will flash on my portal that this or that vendor is a compliant one. That never happened.
That never
You know,
happened.
what we as customers are doing, we are giving free service to government. We are
Absolutely.
first we are collecting taxes and paying on our direct sales, and then we are asked to ensure that even my vendors are compliant.
Yeah.
So
So government is
This is
saying that nothing comes for free, but here the cost is little more than what you pay for.
yeah,
I just want to make one comment, to add to Mr. Amita's point on this rating. I think very soon we will get a certificate from GST department that your 95% suppliers are compliant. So
Forget
you will
about your compliance.
not get a certificate for yourself. If your 95% suppliers are compliant, then you will get a certificate.
rightly said, sir. Yes.
That's true, sir. Shrey, last point from you. What do you think that, considering the requirement of the law, what can be the best checks and balances which can be kept in the system? Because we all know we have to comply with howsoever we may cry and crib about it, but we have to comply. In your industry or in general as an industry, what do you think can be some top 3 4 5 points where those checks and balances can be maintained so that a taxpayer can have certain peace of mind when he's doing these compliances in terms of ITC matching?
See, I think as far as checks and balances are concerned, I personally feel, I think somewhere, I think the uniformity needs to come into place. I think a lot of times when we face a problem as far as ITC reconciliation is concerned, is basically, the format of the invoice vis-a-vis what my vendor is using, what my system can accept is very, very different. And sometimes forget even about the formatting, the date, for example, or the invoice number. My vendor is entering in a certain way, my system is fetching it in a certain way. So there's a mismatch. So I think maybe if they can sort of align the format of the invoice, maybe some sort of a guideline to that respect, I think that will very well solve the problem.
So sometimes, just to add on, sometimes these mismatches, which are the probable mismatches which happen because of mismatch between the numbers, etc. According to you, by doing this, these would get minimized, and I would have more match credits than the mismatch credits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's point number one. I think point number two, I think, and this goes to a larger extent, what I think the every industry wants is, I think, reduction in compliance. So I think the moment you reduce the number of returns a person needs to file, and, and borrowing from what Mr. Mittal also said from Chanakya, I think what Chanakya also said was that the moment you reduce the rates and the compliance, automatically your tax collection will increase.
Correct.
So I think the more the compliance, the less would be the compliance from the people or maybe from the small players. So I think the moment they reduce the compliance, say suppose right now they only ask us to file one return, just like it was there in service tax.
Correct.
It was very well managed to that extent, which is still better than GST. So I think number one, they need to reduce the number of returns a person needs to file. Then needs to reduce the frequency under which the person needs to file, from monthly maybe to quarterly or whatever. We may need to deliberate on that further. But I think this will seriously help in reducing the mismatches also. And I think third very important point, which is the key here, is that you need to ensure that whether your supplier has paid GST or not. I think when you have one return, and if that during that return only you need to make sure that you pay the GST, and basis that a check is in system, that only then it will get reflected to the other person's credit taking ability, two-way or whatever. I think automatically a lot of reconciliation will come into place. So that mismatch will happen. So I think these are the three major points that I see can be implemented or should be considered by the government to sort of improve the process.
Right. So I think there should be a sales season in tax also, like we have in the fashion industry and other way. There's an end of reason sale and all. There should be one end of tax paying sale where the tax officer should give some benefits, of course, all in dreams. Mr. Mohanty, what will be your suggestions to the government? Where, like Shrey has mentioned some few points that these are things which should be considered for making it a little more simpler for us. Other than this, what do you think can be more points to be added, which we can route through the forum of AFTP and we can reach out to the government?
One thing, Geetika, what I feel is, you just don't hold a professional for everything, responsible for everything. We in the industry, or like I said earlier also, maybe a practicing CEO also. things get overlooked. Now, this is the way it happens. We are not expected to look into only one law here. There's so many. No, the labor code is coming up very soon, and yesterday there was a new bill of Haryana domicile employment. We also operate in all 28 GS10s. So we have to look into so many things, and so many laws have to be complied with. So why not make it a little let hellish for us? I understand, that there are revenue shortages, and believe me, the people who are really evading, the government cannot and the government dare not catch hold of them. We all know what happens in Purani Delhi and Delhi 6 and Delhi 5. It's only people like us. It's criminal to be big in India. So and it is and it is even more criminal to be on time. We have seen this, that
Yes.
the later you get, the more easier your life is. Like in that date extension happened in on 28th. So my take would be, you please spare a few thoughts for the professional community as well. Like you are so concerned with the legal community, the lawyer community. We are also, making things happen for you. And it was very easy to criticize CAs at the time of demonetization, as Mr. Mittal rightly pointed out. But it was us only. If you spare the dark side, we made it happen actually. That demonetization thing, we advise how to do it correctly.
Correct.
Similarly, the GST implementation is not done by the GSTN. GSTN, it is us. We are doing it. We are doing, and we are providing feedback. And what do we get in return? It's anybody's guess. Things are not going to improvise. So my request would be to see the accountability part and reduce the compliance burden. It's too much now.
Right, sir. Point well taken. Compliances is something which, from the very inception of GST, every taxpayer has been complaining about, and we have seen in time again it is just being increased, and there is no slashing of any compliances. Like Mr. Mittal said, that if you're introducing Plan A, continue with it. If you are going for Plan B, discontinue with A and go for B. Don't have Plan A, B, C, D, etc. all together, because it just creates nuisance for the taxpayers and nothing more than that. Sir, Mr. Mittal, what is your suggestion other than what we have already discussed right now? What do you think can be, taken up to the government and given as a practical suggestion where you need some changes which should be made in the law?
Yeah, so first is, I would say that whatever government is going to do, they should do something to build trust. I see a clear trust deficit between both the parties, right? The SSC and the government.
Correct.
So whatever government is going to act, it should be with the objective to, reduce the trust deficit. Second point, referring to our discussion on input tax reconciliation. So what are the pain points, right? Filing return is not a pain point, right? So because if you have a standard ERP solution like WebTel, you can, if you are raising your invoices, you can easily file your GST-R1 return. There is no issue.
Correct.
The issue comes when it comes to a reconciliation, right? There is a big focus on MSME, right? Now, my point is, if the government really want to ease out some pressure on industry, they should also come out and say, if your vendor is registered under MSME, right, and he has uploaded the return, right, you just need to avail a certificate that he has complied with the requirement. No need to do a reconciliation. Believe me, that will be a big relief to big companies. Second, like Mr. Mohanty said, it seems apparently that I should not be dealing with the small people. That is not the intent of the government at all.
Correct.
We should promote the small people, and that is why government is coming out to make changes in the MSME Act.
Right.
So incentivize those people who are, and also let their account be certified by a chartered accountant. And they should file an annual return, and while getting their MSME status renewed every year, it should be backed by a certificate by an independent chartered accountant. And if it is in line, only then their MSME status should be renewed. Otherwise, the action will be taken against those.
Yeah.
So that will be a big relief, because company like, big companies, there is no issue because they all have the standard system. They have SOPs in place. You have terms of agreement with them. Even in some of the small cases, even if we are entering into agreement, the small companies are even not reading at the terms of the agreement. They are simply signing it.
Correct.
How are you gonna impose? You can't take everything to the court of law.
Exactly.
So that is not the intent. मुझे business करना है. Let me do the concentrate on the business. Give me some relief. Which are the main pain areas? Big companies, not the pain areas.
Correct.
MSME, yes. Then make some changes. What I suggested, I think that would be a big relief.
Correct. So all in all, what Mr. Mointy said, that person who is already in system is not the one who is intending to evade the tax, because he's already in the system. He's in the eyes of the law. Wherever the tax evasion is happening is people who are outside the system. So, but natural, companies like Varun Beverages and Woodland and all, you will really want to deal with people who are not registered in the system. There could be some exceptions because those are not in some, everything is not possible to be done with the registered players. But largely the transactions happen between the registered people. So somewhere this intention or this, the belief of the government that the taxpayers are evading tax, this needs to be addressed in a different way, not by imposing such harsh provisions and making one person liable for both the parties and indirectly making me responsible for someone else's compliance. Something I think we should maybe go back to the pre-GST era, where we never had this kind of a matching requirement. It was not a condition. Maybe back we had this matching principle, but that was only kept at the tax officers level as a.
And second, also, they should promote the non-cash economy.
Correct.
So whenever there is a cash payment, then yes, there would be a greater scrutiny. If the cash payment is less than 5%, then yes, they should be incentivized.
Yeah, in fact, sir, just to supplement what you're saying is that wherever there are cash payments, there can be some, check mechanisms that a person who's receiving money in cash, whether he has deposited it or not.
Correct.
Because someone who's paying to the system, it would be very easier for the authorities to track it. He cannot, deny the fact that the money has come or he has made some supply. So all in all,
and Geetika, believe me, government has all such think tank available. That is why they have very recently brought that provision of 1% cash payment, blockage of ITC or usage of ITC up to 99%. Why they are bringing that? Because they want that person to use the banking channel so that he will come under the, I would say, under the mainstream, not under the tax net even, but in the mainstream. So they have that thinking available.
Correct.
But they need to be little liberal with the honest taxpayer and implement it accordingly.
I agree, sir. I think maybe, yes.
Yeah, I have a question from my YouTube chat. It says that Do Invoicing has any part to help solving all these problems.
Sorry, come again. Which invoicing? E-invoicing.
E-invoicing, yeah.
See, certainly e-invoicing is going to help because all this data, which is going to the portal for the generation of IRN, etc., this is going to be posted on GSTR1. But one should also remember that as on date, this GSTR1 is amendable. So any person can still make changes, go onto the portal, and like we have been discussing that showing data on GSTR1 has no linkage with the payment in 3B. So this mismatch, etc., will continue. So there is a disconnect in all of this, but yes.
And what do you do for small taxpayers?
Yeah, what do you do for small taxpayers? And major chunk somewhere would be B2Cs. B2C, anyways, it's only a dynamic QR code. It is not even going onto the portal. It is an in-house QR code that has to be generated. Yes, the endeavor of government is to catch hold of a transaction at the very first step from where the invoice is being generated. But I think this will take some time to get settled in the economy as big as ours, because people will take time to get used to it. There would be a lot of errors which will happen. People will go back in returns and make changes. There will be a lot of reconciliation issues. So these things are going to prevail over a period of let's say for another 1 or 2 years, till the people start realizing that, you know, any changes from ERP portal to GST portal is nothing, but is only going to add on to one more reconciliation issue for them.
And Geetika, my view on the
Yeah.
e-invoicing is, and you know, with this QR or scenario, everything, the threshold should have started from below rather. No, any person who is above 500 crores, he is anyways compliant. He is not going to, the likelihood is very slim that he is going to suppress his B2C sales.
Correct,
B2C sales, whatever is happening, you know, as I said, that maybe my ignorance, but and with apologies to Mr. Mittal's discourse, you know, the cash economy is going to stay in India. There are so many avenues, so many people, you know, what we are talking, we are maybe talking of some urban or some maybe tier 2 or tier 3 cities who can afford to have a cashless economy, but going to the villages, going to the and my sector deals with the lowest of downtrodden people who are into this business of manufacturing, and when we say that we are going to deposit your wages or your remuneration in your account, so most of the people have to be taught how to open an account because they are illiterates.
correct.
So practically speaking, for the entire economy,
Hmm.
you know, few people are fortunate enough to deal with the cashless people. So it doesn't happen. My take on this is this.
Yeah, I think the approach needs to be changed. Maybe something which is happening first should be taken last, and last should be taken first.
Yeah.
Coming to Tushar, what do you as a consultant, you know, feel that there should be some changes, some suggestions, because you have seen varied sectors and you have seen the nuances of varied sectors. So, what was your, thought process on this?
Geetika ma'am, just to add on to Tushar sir, as we are very short of time now, Tushar sir, we have a couple of questions also which have been posted. So if you can take them together with your view as well. Over to you,
Right.
sir.
Sure, Shubham. So I will not go into any of the technical amendments in respect of GST law or act, etc. I will be discussing one major suggestion from a departmental administrative perspective. Practically, what we are facing as a consultant is in GST litigation, the same issue is being discussed by various different departments of government. There are 4 departments with whom a taxpayer has to deal. I'm talking about GST department. First is its range, its commissionerate, its ward, whatever you call it. Second is the departmental audit wing, which is a separate wing. Third is your anti-evasion. Fourth is your DGGI. So same issue, 4 different authorities. And in fact, in one of my client, I cannot name them, in one of the client, they are facing this similar issue with 4 of the authorities. And even after giving a clear-cut letter that this is being investigated at this level, this is being investigated at this level, so and so forth, you have to deal with them unless you go to High Court and get a relief. And every taxpayer is not so happy to go to High Court easily. So that is one of the most important suggestions, that what issues will be dealt with. I understand DGI is an authority to check evasion, etc. But they are also coming to normal clients doing the very same scrutiny which a departmental audit wing is doing. Range also asks for the same scrutiny. 2A 3B mismatch, for example, you get notices from range. In departmental audit also, they are issuing the very same point. In DGI, in one of the clients, they went and raised this 2A 3B issue. So with how many authorities a taxpayer has to deal? So there should be a clear-cut guidelines, because it's always difficult for the taxpayers to deal with multiple authorities on the very same issue. So there should be a practical guidelines on power of each of the authority, and there should not be duplicacy. So that's my suggestion.
So
Now,
basically, sorry,
yes.
just to add on. So basically your point is that there should not be a duplication on issue. Authorities can come from different departments if they are, adjudicate or they are investigating different issue. That's what you're trying to say.
Absolutely.
Correct. Yeah,
Now coming
next.
to some of the questions which have been raised in the chat box, I will take few of those questions. First is, can I claim ITC on the basis of amount reflected in GSTR 2A, not in 2B? So practically what is happening nowadays is that you are getting two kinds of report in respect of data which is uploaded by the supplier, GSTR 2A and 2B. 2A is a dynamic report. If you download say on 17 or 18th, then you will get the details of updated up to 17 or 18th. Whereas 2B is a static report which is updated only till 13th. Practically, legally speaking, we can avail the credit based on 2A. It is nowhere written in the law that you have to avail the credit only on the basis of 2B, because 2B is updated up to 13th only. Like for example, if I'm filing my GSTR 3B for January month, I have to file it by 20th of February. 2B which I download, I will get the details of my supplier who have uploaded up to 13th. Whereas in 2A, I can get, if I download the 2A on 18th or 19th, I will be able to get the details of the supplier who have uploaded up to 18 and 19. And this 5 days is a big period wherein actually the purchaser gets lots of invoices from the supplier. Ultimate purpose of this 2A 3B reconciliation or 2B 3B reconciliation is that supplier should have uploaded the invoice. So before you file your return on 20th, even if you download 2A, your invoices are reflected in 2A, we can straight away go and claim the credit. There is no need of 2B for claiming the credit. Another question.
May I add to
Yes,
this,
yes.
Tushar? 2B gives us an indication or maybe a prompt that certain credits, despite being reflected in 2A, they are not eligible for credit. So most of the times, what we have seen under this head, not eligible for credit, is that the vendors have given us the correct invoice, but they've uploaded the invoice in the wrong heads. Like if he had given me an IGST invoice at the time of filing his the 2B says that probably he has classified it under C&S, central and state tax. So I think my view on this that although it's a suggestive document, but it gives you a very clear indication that certain credits will not be eligible. So
absolutely, sir. So
yeah.
2B is actually an indicative document for all such grades, but it's only an indicative, and ultimately you have to check yourself
Yes.
and take a decision based on the invoice which you are having it.
True. Agree.
Moving on to the next issue, one of the issue raised by the attendees is that I have the practice of paying the basic amount to the vendor, whereas we pay GST to them the next month when they get reflect the invoice, when the invoices is reflected in my 2A. So is this practice correct? In my view, this practice is correct. This is being opted by many industries that they reimburse the GST amount only when the invoice is reflected in 2A. But you have to ultimately make sure that entire exercise is completed within 180 days. Because there is another condition that if you don't make that tax invoice payment along with the GST payment to your vendor within 180 days of the invoice, your credit has to be reversed. So this entire exercise has to be completed within 180 days. Another issue raised by one of the participants is, can I take the credit of an invoice dated January 2021 and which is also reflected in my 2B, the very same month, January 2021, but I have received the goods in March 2021. So can I take the credit in January only? The answer is no. I can take the credit only if I fulfill all the remaining conditions given under the law. So as per section 16, one of the condition is that I should have received the goods. Since I am receiving the goods in March 2021, so I will be eligible to take the credit in March 2021, irrespective of the fact that the supplier has uploaded in January and it is being reflected in your January 2B. You will be able to take the credit only in March 2021. For this imported goods, whether provisional credit of 5% is available, no, this is not applicable in respect of imported goods. This is only in respect of the domestic transaction, this 5% liberty which is given.
So Tushar, on this, when to take this credit, let me just give you a thumb rule to all the participants.
Yes.
So, whenever you are confused, just put a logic considering that you are a tax authority, right? And especially under GST. So when to avail credit, the thumb rule is as late as possible, right? Meaning thereby, if you have made the payment but not received the goods, you are not allowed to avail the credit. You have received the good but not received the invoice, you are not allowed to avail the credit. You have received the goods but not received the e-invoice. Now, On top of that, under the latest amendment, they are saying if not uploaded. So credit when to be availed as late as possible. And tax when is to be paid as early as possible. So if you have received the advance, just pay the tax. If you have raised the invoice, not supplied, pay the tax. If you have supplied, not raised the invoice, pay the tax. So there are thumb rule to avail the credit as late as possible, pay the tax as early as possible. This is the thumb rule, and you believe me, in 99.99% cases, you will be compliant.
दिनेश जी कहना क्या चाह रहे हैं कि आईटीसी ले ही ना क्या?
नहीं सर, ले ही ना नहीं, मैंने बोला as late as possible.
मतलब डिपार्टमेंट को और गलत इंटरप्रेट ना कर ले, वो इसकी टाइम लिमिट और लगा दे कि 6 महीने बाद, 8 महीने बाद.
गवर्नमेंट की इंटेंशन तो यही है कि अगर 6 महीने तक पैसे नहीं दिए तो उसके बाद रिवर्स कर दो.
नहीं सर, आई थिंक दिनेश सर चाहते हैं डिपार्टमेंट का सबसे फेवरेट एसएससी बनना, क्योंकि ये सबसे अच्छा एसएससी है, सबसे ज्यादा कैश टैक्स पे करता है, सबसे लेट आईटीसी लेता है.
देखो, मैं भी बनना
सर स्टार रेटिंग चाहिए आपको.
But Gitika, if you look at the provision of the law, the way it is drafted,
absolutely,
right,
sir. This is
so many things. Only after that you are allowed to avail the credit. And when it comes to payment of tax, you need to pay the tax as early as possible. Either invoice, either service, either received advance.
Yeah, actually, sir, what you are saying is a position which industry can adopt to keep itself away from the disputes and a complicated situation. I think that is one of a very good suggestion, which if any